I still remember the smell. Not the warm scent of fresh coffee that usually greets me when I walk into the office, but the damp, metallic stench of a basement I didn't even know existed in our building. That morning, I came back from a week-long client trip, tired but proud. We'd just secured a major contract, the kind of deal that should have put my whole team in the spotlight. But instead of finding my desk covered in congratulations notes, I found nothing. My office was empty, completely stripped. And the only clue was a flimsy piece of printer paper taped to the wall with my team's name scrawled in black marker next to the word basement. At first, I thought it was a prank, but when I went down there, dodging exposed pipes, stepping over puddles from a leaky ceiling, I saw them, my team, squeezed between humming industrial machines, sitting on folding chairs like we'd been exiled from our own company. No warning, no explanation, just dumped. In that moment, something broke in me. The company I'd given years of my life to had decided we weren't worth the space we occupied. And I couldn't stop asking myself, why now? Who had done this? And what game were they playing? Before I tell you what happened next, where are you tuning in from? And tell me, have you ever walked into work and felt like you didn't matter? Leave a comment if this brings back a memory. Your story might just remind someone out there that they're not alone. When I looked around that cramped, dimly lit basement, my eyes fell on the faces I knew better than my own reflection. Jordan, sitting cross-legged on the floor, laptop balanced on his knees, still typing away, like the hum of those industrial machines above him was just another background noise. Jordan could build a network from scratch with nothing but an old router and a roll of duct tape. I'd seen him keep an entire server cluster running during a blackout while the rest of the city shut down. Then there was Lena. Sharp eyes, sharper mind. She had this uncanny ability to spot flaws in a system before they caused a single hiccup. People thought she was quiet because she was shy. I knew better. She was calculating, always 5 steps ahead, the kind of person you'd want on your side when everything else was falling apart. Ray was leaning back against the wall, arms crossed. He'd been in the game longer than all of us, a hardware veteran who'd seen every possible way a system could fail and every way to bring it back from the dead. His hands were calloused, his voice calm, even in crisis. If the building was on fire, Ray would be the guy walking out with the hard drives under one arm and a cup of coffee in the other. These weren't just colleagues. They were the kind of people you go to war with. We'd pulled off miracles together, patched holes no one else even knew existed, saved this company more times than I could count. And yet, here they were, squeezed into a corner of a basement, treated like we were disposable. No one had explained why. No one had apologized. I could see it in their eyes. They were looking at me, waiting for me to tell them this was a mistake, waiting for me to have a plan. The truth was, I didn't have one. Not yet. But as I stood there, listening to the steady drip of water from that cracked ceiling, something inside me started to turn. Because if someone had put us down here on purpose, I was going to find out exactly why. It didn't take long to figure out whose fingerprints were all over this. Ethan Vale. He wasn't part of TitanCore a month ago. In fact, the first time I saw him was in the executive lounge, standing a little too close to our COO, laughing like they'd been friends for years. He had that polished look, perfectly tailored suits, just the right amount of stubble, and a smile that made people want to believe him. On paper, he was a growth strategist. In person, he was a salesman with a gift for saying absolutely nothing in the most impressive way possible. Every sentence he spoke was loaded with buzzwords: synergy, scalable innovation, 400% productivity lift. It sounded exciting until you realized there was never any data behind it. The COO ate it up. Suddenly, Ethan was everywhere, leading meetings he didn't understand, signing off on projects he couldn't explain, and most importantly, making space for his efficiency experiment. That experiment? Moving my team out of the way. The rumor was he wanted our office space for his own hand-picked crew, a group that looked more like a marketing department than engineers. They came in with designer laptops, talked about rebranding operations, and seemed to think uptime was a social media metric. I kept telling myself there had to be a misunderstanding. But then Ethan walked past me one afternoon, gave me a polite smile, and said, "Don't take it personally, Maya. It's just the company's evolving." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't an accident. We hadn't been moved because of budget cuts or renovations. This was a takeover. And if Ethan thought shoving us into a basement would make us disappear quietly, he was about to learn just how badly he'd miscalculated. Because I've seen people like him before. Shiny on the outside, hollow on the inside. And I knew exactly how dangerous they could be when they were climbing. The only question was how far was he willing to go to stay on top? It started small. An email here, a missing document there. Permissions I'd always had suddenly gone. At first, I thought it was an IT glitch, but then I saw Ethan's name in the access logs. One Monday morning, I logged in to find my calendar wiped clean. The weekly systems review I'd hosted for years, gone. In its place was a new meeting led by Ethan covering operational overhaul strategies. My team wasn't invited. By Wednesday, I couldn't even open the core server dashboard. When I asked IT about it, they mumbled something about executive directives. That's when it clicked. This wasn't sloppy management. It was a deliberate chokehold. Friday was the breaking point. I walked into the COO's conference room expecting to present on a critical security patch. Instead, I found Ethan at the head of the table, smiling like he owned the place. He didn't even let me sit before announcing, "Maya's team has been reassigned, effective immediately." Then he pulled up a slide showing a timeline of efficiency initiatives with my name nowhere on it. He made it sound like we'd agreed to this, like I'd stepped aside willingly. I wanted to speak up, but every instinct told me this wasn't the time. In front of the COO, in front of his people, I'd look defensive. And that's exactly what he wanted. The real gut punch came when I got back to the basement. My team's project files, months of work, had been moved to a shared drive controlled by Ethan's new hires. No warning, no backup left behind. Ray slammed his laptop shut, muttering something under his breath. Lena looked at me, waiting for a signal. Jordan just shook his head. I felt the weight settle on my shoulders. Ethan wasn't just pushing us out of sight anymore. He was dismantling our ability to do the job at all. And if he could take that from us in a single week, what else was he planning to strip away next? There's a rule I've carried with me into every job. No matter where you are, no matter how badly they treat you, always leave things better than you found them. Some people call it pride. I call it my insurance policy. That Monday, standing in the middle of our cramped basement corner, I repeated that rule to my team, not to comfort them, but to give them direction. Ethan could strip our access, rewrite the org chart, and pretend we didn't exist, but he wasn't going to catch us unprepared. We started documenting everything, every process, every fix, every odd system behavior we'd learned to anticipate over the years. Lena built a private log of recurring issues no one else even knew existed. Jordan created step-by-step recovery plans for systems only we understood. Ray quietly inventoried the hardware, noting which machines were overdue for maintenance and which had been patched together with quick fixes that would eventually fail. On the surface, it looked like we were just doing our jobs, but underneath, we were building something far more valuable, a map of the company's true infrastructure, warts and all. The kind of map that could save the place or sink it. We didn't talk about revenge. We didn't have to. The unspoken agreement was clear. We'd finish our work with precision, tie up every loose end, and keep records only we could fully interpret. Ethan wanted to believe we'd given up. I wanted him to. Because if he thought the basement had broken us, he'd never see what was coming. Late one night, as the rest of the building sat dark, I stayed behind finishing a report that didn't officially exist. It detailed every critical point of failure in the network, the kind that could bring operations to a standstill. I encrypted it, saved it in 3 different places, and locked it behind a password only I knew. It wasn't sabotage, it was survival, and it was the first step in making sure Ethan Vale would never hold all the cards. The only question left was how long could we keep building our safety net before he realized what we were doing? In a fight like this, you don't always win by throwing the hardest punch. Sometimes you win by bringing the right person into the room. That's why I called Clara Nguyen. Clara wasn't just a client, she was the head of operations for Apex Dynamics, one of TitanCore's biggest contracts. We'd worked together for years, quietly solving problems that could have cost millions if they'd gone public. She trusted me, and I trusted her. When I invited her to see our new workspace, she didn't understand at first. But the moment she stepped into the basement and saw my team crammed between humming machinery, her expression changed. "This is where they put you?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Apparently, it's the most efficient use of resources," I said, keeping my tone even. I knew word would get back to Ethan, but that was the point. If he wanted to hide us, I was going to make sure the right people saw exactly where we were. 2 days later, Clara requested a meeting with the COO to discuss integration improvements. I got an invite too, along with Ethan and a few of his new hires. The meeting started like most of Ethan's performances, flashy slides, vague promises, and that rehearsed smile. But Clara didn't let him glide past the details. "Can you walk me through the data behind your 400% productivity increase?" she asked, leaning forward. For the first time since he arrived, I saw Ethan hesitate. He clicked through a few slides, said something about early indicators, but the numbers weren't there. Clara didn't push further, not in front of everyone, but she didn't have to. The silence said enough. When the meeting ended, she caught my eye and gave the smallest nod. No words, just a promise, one I knew she'd keep. Walking back to the basement, I could almost feel the shift. Ethan still had power, but now there was a crack in his armor. And cracks have a way of spreading. The question was, how soon before that first crack became something big enough to break him wide open? It was 3 days after that meeting when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Maya, it's Clara," the voice said before I could even say hello. "We need to talk. Not here. Lunch, my treat." I met her at a quiet bistro across town, the kind of place where the hum of conversation was just loud enough to keep others from listening in. She didn't waste time with small talk. "I've been thinking," she said, sliding a folder across the table, "you and your team have been propping up TitanCore for years. What if you stopped doing it for them?" I opened the folder. It wasn't just a job offer. It was an entire blueprint. New roles for every member of my team, salary increases, full creative control, resources that TitanCore had been denying us for years. "You wouldn't have to fight for air," she added. "No politics, no Ethan Vale, just results and recognition." It was tempting, more tempting than I wanted to admit. I could already see Lena thriving with real support, Jordan building systems without corporate interference, Ray finally getting the hardware he'd been begging for, and me, I could breathe again. But as Clara spoke, a knot tightened in my stomach. Walking away would be easy. Maybe too easy, because leaving wouldn't just get us out, it would leave TitanCore in Ethan's hands, free to rewrite the narrative any way he wanted. Clara leaned back, reading my hesitation. "Think about it. My offer stands, but not forever, and I'm not the only one watching what's happening over there." Her words stuck with me long after she left. I could hand my team a fresh start tomorrow, or stay and fight a battle we might lose. Back in the basement that night, I looked around at my team, working in the dull hum of the machinery. I wondered if they'd take the lifeline without a second thought, or if, like me, they still had something to prove here. Because sometimes the harder choice isn't leaving, it's deciding to stay. And I had a feeling my decision was going to draw more attention than I wanted. The call came late in the afternoon, just as I was packing up to leave. "Maya Cross?" "Yes, this is Victor Shaw." My office. 10 minutes. Victor Shaw, the CEO of TitanCore. I'd spoken to him exactly twice in my career, both times in passing. For him to call me directly, that didn't happen without a reason. His office was on the top floor behind double glass doors, the kind of space where the carpet feels thicker than most mattresses. He didn't offer me a seat right away. Instead, he studied me for a moment like he was deciding how much of the truth he was willing to share. "I know what's been happening," he said finally. "Vale's little efficiency project, the basement, the reassignments." I kept my face neutral. "Then you also know it's killing productivity." He smiled, but it wasn't warm. "Productivity isn't the point. Testing leadership under pressure is." That's when he told me Ethan Vale wasn't here just to run his pet projects. He was here to see how far he could push me before I either broke or fought back. And I asked. "You're still here," Victor said, "which means you've passed my test. But now I need to know, are you willing to operate with more authority?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I can bring you out from under the CO, put you directly under me. Full autonomy, budget control, access to anything you need. But it comes with risk. You'll make enemies." I didn't answer right away. The offer was everything I'd been asking for, minus one crucial detail. It didn't remove Ethan. It just gave me a bigger stick to swing at him. Victor must have read my hesitation. "Think carefully, Maya. This isn't just about you or Vale. The board's watching, and so is Apex Dynamics." I left his office with the city skyline stretching out in front of me, the sun already dipping low. My phone buzzed with a message from Clara. "Any thoughts on my offer?" 2 doors had just opened, but I could only walk through one, and whichever one I chose was going to change everything. I didn't sleep much that night. 2 offers, 2 escape routes, both tempting, both dangerous. But when I walked into the basement the next morning and saw my team hunched over their laptops, surrounded by the hum of those machines, I knew the answer. I wasn't going to choose between TitanCore and Apex Dynamics. I was going to choose both. That afternoon, I called Clara. "I'll take your offer," I said before she could speak, "but on one condition. You let me split my team. Half stays with you, half stays here. I'll act as a bridge between both companies." There was a pause, then a short laugh. "You're playing both sides." "Not playing," I corrected, "building a safety net." Next, I walked straight into Victor Shaw's office. "I'll take the role," I told him. "Direct access, full autonomy. But I'll be contracting with Apex Dynamics on the side officially, with your approval. It keeps TitanCore in control of the technology and Apex in the loop." Victor leaned back in his chair, studying me. "That's unconventional." "So is burying your best people in a basement," I replied. For a moment, I thought he'd say no, but then he smiled that thin CEO smile and said, "Fine, if you can make it work, you have my blessing." By the end of the week, the new structure was in place. Half my team moved into Apex's sleek downtown offices, finally breathing clean air. The other half stayed in TitanCore's system, reporting directly to me. Ethan still had his efficiency project, but now he had to work around a department he couldn't touch, and a partner company that had no reason to tolerate his games. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was no longer his game. From that moment on, the rules had changed. I wasn't defending my position anymore. I was expanding it. And Ethan Vale, he didn't even realize the clock had started ticking on him. The invitation to the quarterly board meeting landed in my inbox with no explanation. Normally, only the executive team and major stakeholders attended. I wasn't either, at least not officially. When I walked into the boardroom, the air was already thick. 12 chairs around a polished mahogany table, the skyline glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Ethan was there, standing by the projector, radiating confidence like he owned the place. Victor sat at the head of the table. "Let's begin," he said. Ethan started with his usual routine, charts full of upward arrows, vague statistics about efficiency gains, and streamlined processes. He talked like the basement move was a masterstroke, not a demotion. Then Victor turned to me. Maya, your report. I stood, sliding a slim envelope onto the table. In here is a 5-year operational review. Real numbers, no projections. One by one, the board members opened their copies. Inside, detailed uptime statistics showing my team's direct contributions to 82% of the company's stability. A risk analysis predicting a 35% drop in system performance if Ethan's model replaced ours. And tucked in the back, a public record of lawsuits from 2 companies Ethan had optimized before both now bankrupt. The room went quiet. Ethan laughed a little too loudly. This is cherry-picked. Every source is verifiable, I cut in. And Apex Dynamics has confirmed they'll terminate their contract if my team is removed from oversight. That got their attention. Apex accounted for nearly a quarter of TitanCore's annual revenue. Losing them would be catastrophic. The COO shifted uncomfortably. A couple of board members started whispering. Victor leaned back, watching the scene unfold like a chess player 3 moves ahead. Ethan's smile faltered. This isn't. It's exactly what's happening, I said. And it's your choice whether we fix it now or let the damage play out in real time. The tension in that room was so thick you could feel it in your chest. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Victor cleared his throat. Let's take a vote. And that was the moment I knew the boardroom wasn't going to leave Ethan untouched. The vote wasn't even close. 8 in favor, 3 against, 1 abstained. Victor didn't smile, but the subtle nod he gave me said everything. Ethan Vale's efficiency initiative was terminated on the spot. The board ordered a full audit of his projects and quietly suspended him from all decision-making pending review. The COO tried to intervene, muttering something about strategic vision, but Victor cut him off with a look sharp enough to slice glass. This company runs on results, not theater, he said. Ethan stayed seated, his hands flat on the table, knuckles white. For the first time since he arrived, he didn't have a comeback. The glossy confidence, the rehearsed charm, it was all gone. When the meeting adjourned, the board members filed out quickly, avoiding his eyes. I gathered my folder, ready to leave, but Ethan hauled after me. You think you've won? His voice was low, bitter. I paused at the doorway. I don't have to think, Ethan. The numbers already proved it. By the next morning, word had spread. His pet team was reassigned. The prime office space he'd taken from us was cleared out. My team's files were restored to our control, and our access was reinstated across the network. I won't pretend there wasn't satisfaction in seeing him pack up his things under the quiet gaze of the receptionist. No outburst, no grand speech, just a man walking out with a cardboard box and the echo of his own ambition chasing him down the hall. But victory didn't feel like champagne and confetti. It felt steady, solid, like breathing clean air after weeks underground. And yet, I couldn't shake the thought. Removing Ethan was only part of the battle. The cracks in TitanCore's culture, the politics that let someone like him rise so fast, they were still there. If I really wanted to make sure this never happened again, I'd have to build something stronger than just a win in a boardroom. And that's where the real work began. Ethan was gone within the week. The COO kept his title, but his influence faded fast. Victor made it clear TitanCore was moving in a different direction. My team was finally out of the basement, split between TitanCore and Apex Dynamics exactly as I'd planned. Lena was thriving, leading a systems upgrade at Apex with a budget she'd only dreamed of before. Jordan was deep in a new AI-driven network project that was already impressing clients. Ray's steady, unshakable Ray was training a new batch of engineers, passing down every trick he'd learned over decades. And me, I wasn't just managing a team anymore. I was shaping how two companies worked together, making sure no one could quietly bury good people in the dark again. But the real shift wasn't in the org charts or the offices. It was in the way my team carried themselves now. We knew our worth. And more importantly, so did everyone else. Looking back, I realized something. Winning isn't always about taking someone down. Sometimes it's about building something so strong that their games can't touch you. If I'd left when Clara offered, maybe we would have been happy for a while. But the system that allowed Ethan to rise would still be standing. Staying meant risk. It meant late nights, careful planning, and holding my ground when it would have been easier to walk away. But it also meant creating a space where the next Ethan Vale would never get a foothold. And that's the part I'm proudest of. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't a dramatic takedown. It's making sure the stage is set so no one like him ever gets to start their act. What about you? If you were in my place, would you have stayed to change the game or taken the lifeline and walked away?